There's something peculiar about the moment you're in right now. Maybe you were scrolling, searching, or simply sensing. And yet, here you are, not by accident, but by alignment. Tonight, we'll explore a strange and gentle truth, that reality doesn't respond to your effort, but to your frequency. And what if the thing you've been chasing has already arrived, just waiting for you to match its tone? This story isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering something you never truly forgot. So settle in. Take a breath wherever. You are maybe in your room, in your bed, on a walk, or somewhere between worlds. However you've landed here, welcome. Subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. Now, close your eyes if you like and picture this. A quiet inner field where thoughts turn to vibration, where every doubt is just a detuned signal, and where your reality gently reforms the moment you remember who you are. Let's begin. Where silence meets coherence, and where resonance becomes your softest power. You've been told for so long that change requires effort, that you must push harder, try more, discipline your desires, and restrain your instincts. That to earn anything of value, peace, love, health, abundance, you must struggle for it. Prove you're worthy. Battle through the noise. And for years, maybe lifetimes, you've believed it. You've shaped your identity around it. Waking early, trying again, fixing the part of yourself that never seemed quite enough. And yet, somewhere beneath that pattern, another voice whispers, not loud, not urgent, but deep. It says, what if it never had to be this hard? What if all that striving is not the key, but the interference? There is a softness underneath. Everything. A field that doesn't judge your worth by your busyness. A presence that doesn't demand your exhaustion as proof of your devotion. The quantum world, that mysterious, invisible dance of energy, waves, and particles has been revealing this truth all along. But its language isn't the one you were taught. It speaks not in commands, but in coherence. Not in deadlines, but in resonance. Not in pressure, but in presence. Reality, it turns out, does not bend to your effort. It bends to your frequency dot, and here is where things begin to feel strange. Because your logical mind, conditioned by a world of clocks and contracts and cause-effect mechanics, recoils at this softness. It wants to do, not to tune. It wants to plan, not to feel. But the field doesn't respond to plans. It responds to signals. Emotional, energetic, embodied signals. The kind you send even when your lips say nothing. This is why some people receive what they never chase, and why others chase forever and never receive. It's not injustice. It's interference. It's not punishment. It's incoherence. Pause for a moment right now. Breathe in. Not as a task, but as an allowance. Let the inhale arrive like a signal, and the exhale as surrender. Do you feel that? The silence under your thoughts? That is the space where frequency loves. The space where alignment begins, not with a checklist, but with a remembrance. You are not born to prove. You were born to resonate. And that remembering is not spiritual fluff. It is quantum law. Coherence in the language of quantum physics is the harmony of waves, particles vibrating in rhythm, reinforcing each other instead of canceling each other out. When your inner world, your thoughts, your feelings, your body begins to align into a single vibration, you send out a signal so clear that reality cannot help but shape itself around it, not because you forced it, but because you became undeniable. But here's where most people lose the thread. They confuse effort with effectiveness. They chant mantras with clenched jaws. They visualize peace while bracing for disappointment. They declare trust while checking their phone every 10 minutes for signs. This is not coherence. It's static. The field hears all of it even. The parts you deny. And so your signal becomes split, diluted, hesitant. You are not being punished. You are simply out of sync. Have you ever noticed how the best moments in life, the ones that feel guided, magical, right, tend to come when you've stopped trying so hard? When you let go? When you relax into presence? That's coherence. That's what the field mirrors. The reason it feels like life flows better when you're calm isn't a fluke. It's physics. But this isn't just about being positive. It's about being clear. Clarity is not just a mental decision. It's a vibrational signature. And clarity is often buried under noise. The noise of fear, the buzz of urgency, the mental static of how and when and what if. To become coherent, you don't need to try more. You need to simplify. Let the thousand scattered thoughts fall. Let the emotional tug-of-war release. Let your body feel safe enough to stop bracing for proof. This isn't laziness. It's precision. Imagine your consciousness as a beam of light. When it's scattered through a cracked lens of doubt and overthinking, the light is weak, diffused, harmless. But when it's focused, when the lens is clear, the same light can cut through steel. Your vibration works the same way. One clear signal can do what 1,000 desperate actions never could. But you must become still enough to tune it. And the strange part? The simpler the signal becomes, the more your mind will fight it. Why? Because struggle has become your safety blanket. Effort is familiar. Complication feels productive. Simplicity feels suspicious. Too easy. And yet the truth remains. The field does not amplify effort. It amplifies frequency, Doc. So how do you change your frequency? You stop chasing and start choosing. You pause long enough to feel your own contradiction. You admit what you really want. You allow your nervous system to exhale. You pick one tone, just one, and rest in it. Not for performance, not for praise, but because it feels like home. And that, right there, is when reality starts to shift, not because you hacked the system, but because you stopped jamming the signal. The version of you who already has what you want, peace, love, health, purpose, already exists. In quantum terms, every possible version of you is real, coexisting as probabilities. You don't need to build that version from scratch. You just need to tune to its frequency. Like a radio dial, your job isn't to invent the music. Your job is to clear the static so you can hear what's already playing. But tuning is an act of presence, not performance, Dot. It means noticing when your thoughts betray your emotions, when your words contradict your fears, when your body says no while your mouth says yes. It means catching the moments when you're pretending to trust, but actually doubting everything. It means becoming intimate with your own vibration. Honest, quiet, uncluttered, Dot. And here's the gift. Once you begin to recognize coherence, it becomes your compass. You start to feel when something's off, not because it's bad, but because it's dissonant. You begin to crave alignment more than approval, stillness more than drama, truth more than certainty. You no longer need to convince the universe. You've become its tuning fork, Dot, and as you walk through your life with this awareness, you notice subtle shifts. Conversations land more softly. Opportunities feel less like scrambles and more like you stop chasing signs because you've become one. You stop repeating affirmations because your state is the affirmation. You stop begging reality to respond because it already is. You're just listening now. And yet, doubt will still visit. That's okay. Old habits of urgency will resurface. That's normal. But instead of panicking, you will recognize it. This is noise. And you'll return, not with force, but with breath, with remembrance, with a smile that knows, I don't have to fight for what's already mine. I just have to resonate with it. Not so much of the struggle you've carried wasn't about failure. It was about misinterpretation. You thought the silence meant you weren't being heard. You thought the delay meant denial. But the quantum field doesn't delay out of cruelty. It waits for clarity. It holds space until your signal becomes strong enough to lock onto the version of reality that matches your tone. Not your words, not your effort, your tone, your vibration, your being. You are not a beggar of blessings. You are the broadcaster. You always were. And yet, we forget. Because we've been taught to fear stillness. We think that if we stop spinning our wheels, everything will collapse. But stillness is not the absence of momentum. It is the presence of alignment. And alignment doesn't look like constant motion. It looks like internal permission. It feels like the absence of contradiction. The melting of tension in your chest. The unclenching of your jaw when you finally stop repeating stories that no longer resonate. In the quantum realm, everything exists in potential. Not someday, but now. Time is not a line. It's a field. Every possible version of you is present. The you who is already healed. The you who already feels safe. The you who wakes up with purpose and ease. They are not figments of imagination. They are frequencies. And each frequency is an invitation. The question is not, how do I create that reality? The question is, am I matching that version with my current vibration? But here is where the ego trembles. Because tuning to a new version of yourself means letting go of the story that kept you safe. The one that says, I must earn love. The one that insists, I'm only valuable if I'm productive. The story of I need to fix myself before I can receive. And these stories, even when painful, feel familiar. They feel like home. Letting them go creates a strange sense of emptiness at first. But that emptiness, that's your new signal. That's clarity. You were never meant to carry so much contradiction. To speak light and breathe fear. To visualize abundance while rehearsing loss. To chant peace while tightening your stomach with every unknown. This incoherence is not your fault. It's your inheritance. Generations before you were shaped by scarcity and control. But you are the interruption. You are the recalibration. You are the soft revolution. And it doesn't require an audience. You don't have to declare anything. You don't have to announce your evolution. Coherence is not loud, it's precise. You simply begin choosing thoughts that match your emotions and behaviors that match your truth. You catch yourself when you reach for panic out of habit, and instead, you pause. You return to your breath. You remember, this is not mine to control. This is mine to harmonize with. And this is where something strange begins to happen. Reality softens, not in dramatic ways at first, but in small, almost invisible ones. The conversation that used to trigger you no longer lands. The rejection that would have spiraled you suddenly feels neutral. You laugh more. You sleep deeper. Your body no longer braces for impact in the morning. You begin to trust pauses instead of fearing them. And what once felt like waiting now feels like tuning. Your identity begins to shift, not into something new, but into something remembered. You stop measuring progress by proof and start measuring it by peace. You find yourself saying less and feeling more. And in that stillness, in that space between effort and surrender, something begins to respond. People call it luck, serendipity, magic. But it's not magic. It's coherence, and coherence, once felt, becomes addictive, not in a grasping way, but in a peaceful one. Because for the first time in your life, you're not pushing, you're allowing. You're not chasing outcomes. You're aligning with them. And this alignment is not a passive thing. It's active stillness. It's choosing to keep your signal clean, even when the world invites you to distort it. It's choosing simplicity when your nervous system screams for control. And yes, the nervous system will scream, because you've trained it to associate chaos with aliveness. You've linked urgency to worth, but coherence isn't loud. It's subtle, and you must become intimate with subtlety to master it. This is the forgotten art of frequency, not in theory, but in practice. And practice begins with noticing. Noticing how often your body speaks truths your mind avoids, how your shoulders tense before your thoughts do, how your breath shallows when you pretend everything's fine. Your frequency is not built by performance. It's shaped by honesty, the kind that whispers, "I'm scared, but I don't need to be. I'm tired, but I'm allowed to rest. I don't know how this works, but I trust what I feel." That's the beginning of coherence, the merging of honesty and surrender. And as your signal cleans itself through softness, something even more beautiful arises. The awareness that you never had to do this alone. That the field, the intelligence of life itself, was always listening, not to your effort, but to your essence. It's been waiting, not for you to get louder, but for you to get clearer. And clarity comes when you stop pretending. To be okay when you're collapsing. Pretending to be aligned when you're fragmented. Pretending to trust when you're terrified. The field doesn't need your performance. It needs your resonance. And resonance doesn't demand perfection. It requires truth. So let yourself be truthful. Let yourself admit the contradiction between what you say and what you feel. Between the vision you hold and the fear you feed. Let it rise. Let it move. Let it dissolve. You are not broken for being fragmented. You are human. But coherence is your birthright. And it begins with choosing one true tone and living from it. That tone might be peace, or safety, or gratitude, or simplicity. Whatever it is, choose it. Not just in words, but in state, in breath, in movement, in expectation. And then, hold it, not like a job, but like a melody. Let it sing through your actions. Let it color your thoughts. Let it soften your habits. And watch how reality begins to rearrange itself, not because you're controlling it, but because you're finally matching it. There comes a point in the journey, not marked by grand epiphany or external shift, but by something quieter. When you realize that the most powerful thing you can do is nothing, not in the apathetic sense, but in the deeply aware, vibrationally clean, permission-giving kind of nothing. You stop trying to push reality into place. You stop micromanaging every detail. You stop negotiating with the universe. Instead, you lean back into a strange trust that feels like floating. You open without demanding. You soften without collapsing. You become without becoming anything new. And in this space, where effort evaporates, you begin to feel something else. Feedback. Not the kind that comes through words or signs, but through sensation. Through calm. Through increasing moments of rightness you can't explain. It's as if life itself is whispering, "Yes, this is it," not because you earned it, but because you remembered. What did you remember? That everything responds to tone. At every thought you send, every emotion you hold, every breath you claim, they all vibrate. And the field listens, not to language, not to logic, but to vibration. It has always been this way. Long before you asked, the answer existed. Long before you chased it, it was yours. The field does not need to be convinced. It needs to be matched. And you, in your stillest self, are already the match. This is why so much of what you've desired seemed distant, not because it wasn't real, but because you were chasing what you needed to become. You were begging for coherence while vibrating contradiction. And contradiction cannot collapse timelines. It can only delay them. So you stop. You stop demanding. You stop explaining. You stop proving. You realize that the version of you who already lives in the outcome doesn't need to announce it, doesn't need to hustle, doesn't need to ask for permission. That version is calm, clear, soft, and quietly magnetic. And you, in this now moment, can practice being them. How by choosing the signal first? Most people wait for evidence to feel secure. But in the quantum model, security doesn't come after manifestation, it precedes it. Confidence is not the reward, it's the requirement. Safety is not a condition, it's a state. You do not become coherent by waiting for life to align. Life aligns when you become coherent, and coherence begins by honoring what is. This may be the strangest paradox of all, because the more you resist your current experience, the more you distort your signal. But the moment you relax into what is, with presence, with softness, with acceptance, you change your frequency. Not because you forced anything, but because presence itself is vibrational clarity. So the practice is not change. The practice is presence. It's in the breath you notice instead of skipping, the emotion you feel instead of suppressing, the moment you sit with yourself not to fix, but to witness. You become less of a performer and more of a receiver, less of a seeker and more of a signal. You remember that you are not here to chase vibrations. You are here to embody one. And embodiment is not concept. It is lived tone. It shows up in how you open the door, how you stir your tea, how you breathe when no one is watching. Your frequency is not just in your vision board, it's in your posture. It's in the way your energy moves before your mouth speaks. You've been emitting signals since the moment you woke up. And now, with awareness, you begin to emit with intention, not to control, but to resonate. And as you do, you start noticing reality responding in ways so subtle they would be easy to miss. A call you'd forgotten about suddenly comes through. A burden you'd carried for weeks begins to lift without resolution. A message arrives, not just in words, but in feeling, that says, you're okay now. You didn't earn these shifts by proving anything. You tune to them. And still, the mind may protest. But what if it doesn't last? What if I lose it? What if this is all in my head? But here is the secret the field already knows. Everything is in your head and your body and your energy. Reality is not fixed. It is a projection of coherence. It bends softly, quietly, beneath your tuning. You do not need to grip the outcome. You need only hold the tone, because the tone is the timeline. Every signal you embody becomes a selection. Not in the future, but now. The quantum field is immediate. It doesn't need long explanations. It doesn't respond to how badly you want it. It responds to how completely you've become it. So you practice. You notice when you begin to splinter, when fear creeps in and starts changing the frequency. You catch it softly, like a child about to wander into the street. You say, come. Back, you breathe. You choose again, not harshly, but precisely. You shift from panic to permission, from confusion to clarity, from doubt to stillness. Again and again, not as failure, but as recalibration. Each recalibration sharpens the signal. Each signal becomes a thread in the fabric of your new experience. And this is how the shift begins to anchor. Not in one grand gesture, but in 1,000 soft choices. You wake up and feel peace, not because the world changed, but because your tuning did. You face uncertainty with a strange calm, not because you have the answers, but because your frequency has become your compass. You start receiving not by asking harder, but by needing less. The field fills you, not because you fought for it, but because you cleared enough space to receive it. And in this space, this stillness, this remembered field, something even deeper awakens. You stop wanting, not because you've given up, but because you've arrived. Wanting is the vibration. of lack. Arrival is the tone of coherence. You realize the life you desired was never somewhere else. It was always inside the version of you you're finally being. You are no longer seeking. You are singing. And the field? The field sings back because you are not separate from it. You never were. The intelligence of the universe is not external. It is internal. It is the signal you are. And when you stop trying to fix the projection and start attuning the projector, everything changes. You become the answer you were waiting for. You become the safety you sought in others. You become the timeline you once called impossible. And none of it came through effort. It came through remembering. So you breathe again. This time not to calm down, but to call in. Not to correct yourself, but to return to coherence. And THO at breath. So small, so often ignored, becomes the moment reality shifts. You didn't push. You didn't chase. You didn't force. You simply became clear. And the field, ever faithful, ever listening, responded. Because it always does. There is a moment in the journey where the seeking slows. Not because the questions are gone, but because the urgency has dissolved. You no longer run toward outcomes as if they are lifeboats. You begin to see that everything you thought was out there has always been in here. And not just philosophically, viscerally, you feel it. The coherence inside you doesn't just influence the world. It is the world you experience. You walk differently now, not with pride, not with a need to be seen, but with presence. The kind of walk that doesn't look for arrival because it understands the destination is a frequency, not a finish line. You begin to move as if the world is listening, because it is, not to your voice, but to your vibration, not to your performance, but to your tone. And so your tone becomes intentional. Not calculated, not artificial, but chosen. It rises from within you, not like an idea, but like a remembering, like something ancient that was always yours. You step into rooms and you feel the energy before words. You speak and hear yourself more clearly, as if your soul has caught up with your mouth. You stop needing to fill space with explanation. Your silence speaks now, because you've stopped proving you're worthy, proving you're ready, proving you're enough. The proof was never needed. The proof was always presence. And now, your presence no longer apologizes. Not because it's aggressive, but because it's true. You are no longer trying to fit into the shape of someone else's expectation. You are resonating in the shape of your own. And with that resonance, something profound begins to shift. You stop negotiating with life. You no longer barter with the future. If I do this, will you give me that? You no longer beg time to move faster, no longer chase signs, no longer check if the manifestation is close. Because you understand something most forget. The field does not measure distance. It measures vibration. Close and far are illusions of the unaligned. For the coherent, everything is here. Everything is now . So your nervous system relaxes. The timeline tightens. Your breath slows. And life responds. You begin to see beauty in places you once dismissed. The light through a window feels like a conversation. The wind through the trees hums your frequency back to you. You stop scrolling as much, not because you're trying to be disciplined, but because you're no longer seeking distraction. There's nothing to run from anymore. You are finally safe inside yourself. This safety is not because your circumstances are perfect. It's because you've anchored into something beneath them. A stable frequency. A signature tone that isn't reactive. One that doesn't vanish at the first sign of challenge. You're not floating. You're rooted. And from this groundedness, your creations begin to take shape, not as desperate prayers, but as natural expressions. Because coherence isn't just for healing. It's for building. And now, With your system calibrated, you begin to create not from force, but from frequency. You write with ease, speak with precision, love with presence, rest with no guilt. Your life becomes the transmission, and others feel it, not because you tell them, but because coherence is contagious. Your energy begins to remind others of what's possible, not by leading, by being. And yet, there are moments when the old frequencies visit again. The worry, the noise, the looping thoughts. They arrive not to punish, but to test your tuning. They ask, will you revert or will you recalibrate? And now, unlike before, you don't panic. You don't spiral. You recognize them as echoes, not truths. And like a skilled musician, you adjust your tone with breath, with presence, with choice. You are now the tuner, not the tuned dot, and that power is quiet, soft, undeniable dot. This is not spiritual superiority. This is not performance. This is stewardship. You are stewarding your state, managing not your outcomes, but your inner music. And that music plays through everything you touch. Your relationships feel different, not because others have changed, but because your frequency has rewritten the dynamic. You no longer attract mirrors of your wounds. You attract amplifiers of your coherence. And even when contrast appears, you don't collapse. You don't confuse chaos with truth. You simply ask, what part of me resonated with this? Not to blame, but to understand. And then you refine, gently, compassionately. You let the static rise so it can clear. You let discomfort teach without dominating. You feel deeply, but you no longer identify with every emotion. You listen to your vibration like an orchestra tuning before a concert. Every part welcome, but none in control. And this awareness deepens. It becomes your new normal dot. You begin to sense frequencies in conversations, environments, even thoughts that are not your own. You can walk into a room and feel if it's aligned, not in theory, but energetically. And more importantly, you trust it. You don't rationalize the misalignment. You don't force your coherence to fit in others. Chaos. You honor the resonance and adjust accordingly. This is not isolation. It's integrity, and it allows you to choose environments that nourish your frequency rather than challenge it. You are no longer seeking healing by staying in noise. You are no longer trying to prove your worth through sacrifice. You've remembered that your energy is sacred, and coherence is your responsibility. From this place, desire becomes different. You no longer want things to complete you. You want to experience them as extensions of your resonance. You want the relationship that echoes your peace, the career that matches your clarity, the community that amplifies your tone. You are no longer attracting from emptiness. You are expressing fullness, and expression from this place is effortless. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You speak because it's true. You create because it's aligned. You rest because it's coherent. The loop of why earning dissolves. The identity of the struggler fades. You are not becoming anymore. You are being. And that being becomes your new timeline dot. And here, in this timeline, strange things continue to happen. Not because you force them, but because you're tuned for them. Synchronicities appear, not as rare gifts, but as confirmations. You think of someone and they reach out. You dream of a place and get invited there. You drop the worry and the solution shows up. It's not magic. It's magnetism. You are not chasing your future. You are remembering it. Because in quantum terms, your future is already formed. It exists as a signature state, waiting for you to resonate with it fully. And now, that resonance has become your rhythm. You are no longer in pursuit. You are in embodiment. The field is no longer something you speak to. It's something you speak from. You are the field now, Dot, and your life is proof of it. It's strange, isn't it? That after everything, the striving, the reading, the rituals, the effort, the real shift comes not in a breakthrough, but in a breath. Not when you finally figure it out, but when you stop trying to figure it out at all. When you allow what already wants to reach you to arrive. This is not surrender as collapse. It's surrender as precision. You let go of interference, and coherence does the rest. You've entered a new rhythm now, not one of chasing, but of listening. And this listening is not passive. It is active receptivity. It's the quiet devotion of tuning into subtlety, of reading the feedback of your life not with fear, but with curiosity. When something feels off, you don't panic. You pause. You feel the frequency, and you adjust, gently, lovingly, immediately. Like a musician who doesn't blame the instrument, she tunes it. That's what you do now. You don't judge your missteps. You recalibrate, and recalibration becomes your most sacred practice, because you now know the truth most people miss. Life is not responding to what you say. It's responding to what you are. Your state is your instruction. Your tone is your timeline. Your coherence is your permission slip. And nothing outside you can override that. Not circumstances, not delays, not even your doubts, unless you believe them long enough to match their frequency. So you don't fight doubt anymore. You dissolve it. How? Not through argument, but through return. You return to breath, to the space behind your thoughts, to the tone you chose before fear entered the room. You remind yourself that doubt is not an enemy. It's a tuning fork, a mirror showing you where you've begun to echo old signals. And you thank it, and you return. This return becomes effortless over time, not because you never forget, but because you no longer fear forgetting. You know how to come home. And home is no longer a place. It's a signal, one that lives inside your chest, one that knows who you are, even when the world forgets. From this place, you begin to see your past differently, not as a list of failures or delays, but as a series of frequencies you tried on. Each experience, even the painful ones, was part of the tuning. The heartbreak taught you contrast. The confusion taught you clarity. The struggle taught you surrender. Nothing was wasted. Every note brought you closer to your resonance. And now that you're in it, now that you're living from it, life begins to reflect your signal so consistently that you wonder how you ever missed it. You speak and people feel it. You rest and your body heals faster. You think and the solution arrives mid-thought. You sit in silence and feel more than words could ever deliver. You are no longer separate from the field. You are an extension of it. And in that extension, your creations become inevitable. Not because you hustle, but because they are the natural outcome of a coherent signal. You don't try to manifest anymore. You express, you reveal, you remember. And the manifestations that do arrive are not validations of your worth. They are reflections of your tone. You stop worshiping the outcome. You start listening to the process. You start sculpting the energy, not the result. This is the ultimate reversal, because you now know the outcome is the shadow. The tone is the source. So you spend more time in the source. You wake with gratitude, not because it's good to be positive, but because gratitude is vibrational glue. It holds your signal together when the world invites it to scatter. You move slower, not because you're lazy, but because coherence doesn't rush. You become more sensitive, not fragile, but precise. You sense when something contracts your energy, and you honor it. You choose yourself gently, consistently, without fanfare. Your boundaries become frequency-based. If something disrupts your tone, you don't justify or explain. You recalibrate or you release, not out of judgment, but out of alignment. You are no longer available for distortion, not not because you're superior, but because you're sovereign. And this sovereignty is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't defend. It simply resonates, and others feel it. Even if they can't name it, they feel it. Some are drawn closer. Others step back. That's okay. You are no longer tuning yourself to match the room. You are tuning the room by being fully yourself. Not louder, clearer. And clarity at this level becomes a form of love, that you begin to love things differently. Not with attachment, but with awareness. You don't grip experiences, you hold them. You don't define people, you witness them. You love with space, with depth, with resonance. And you begin to receive love in the same tone, not performative, but true. Not conditional, but coherent. You no longer confuse chemistry with chaos. You no longer crave what once wounded you. Your signal has changed, and so have your invitations. And that's the shift. You're not chasing anymore. You're attracting, not people, not things, but reality itself. You are no longer inside a life. You are inside a resonance. And that resonance shapes your time, your health, your opportunities, your connections, everything. Because everything is frequency. And you are no longer an accidental broadcaster. You are deliberate, subtle, sovereign. And with that sovereignty, something extraordinary occurs. You stop trying to be extraordinary. You stop trying to be special, to be recognized, to be impressive. That need dissolves. Not because you no longer care, but because you no longer lack. You know your signal. You feel your worth, and it is steady. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer flinch when people don't see your light, because your light is not for validation. It is for coherence. That you are the remembering dot, and the world will meet you at the depth you meet yourself. So you continue to meet yourself. In the mornings when doubt is loudest, in the nights when silence feels too deep, in the pauses between what was and what is, you meet yourself not with expectation, but with gentleness. You breathe, you return, you signal, again and again, until one day, even the returning stops, because you never left. You've become the field. It's quiet here, isn't it? Not the kind of quiet that feels empty, but the kind that feels full of everything you thought you had to earn. This silence doesn't mock your journey. It honors it. It reflects back to you every breath, every attempt, every loop and return, and says, you've always been coming home. Even in your forgetting, you were on the path of remembrance. And now, you are no longer trying to get there. Because you see, you are there, not at a destination, but at a signal. You are the signal. And the field has always been waiting for you to remember that this signal isn't something you force into being. It's something you uncover. It lives beneath the noise, the proving, the perfectionism, the fear. It was never gone, only buried. And now, as you've cleared the interference, softened the volume of external expectations, and realigned your emotional compass, it pulses again, steady, gentle, unmistakable, like a drumbeat beneath your skin. You begin to notice that your reality no longer feels like something you're surviving, but something you're composing. Each moment, each interaction, each inhale becomes a note in the symphony of your experience. You're not reacting anymore. You're sculpting, not as a god above life, but as a partner in it, a co-creator in the dance between intention and surrender. And what's even stranger, though perhaps more beautiful, is that the more you stabilize in this resonance, the less you need from the world. You no longer look to outcomes to confirm your progress. You don't need things to manifest in order to prove the process works. You're not checking boxes anymore. You're listening to frequencies. can those frequencies guide you more accurately than any to-do list ever did. You wake up not with dread or urgency, but with an odd sense of sacredness. Not because anything spectacular is scheduled, but because every moment has become saturated with meaning. Your body feels like a tuning instrument. Your breath a reminder that you are the carrier of something ancient, something intelligent, something whole. And that wholeness, it doesn't make you invincible. It makes you sovereign. You still feel. You still stumble. But now, you feel with awareness. You stumble with grace. There's no longer a need to hide the rawness. The frequency of coherence is not perfection. It's integrity. It's being honest about your internal signal, even when it shifts. Especially when it shifts, because now you know how to return. And this return isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about tuning what was merely distorted. You understand now that your frequency isn't a straight line. It's a living rhythm. Like breath, like tide, like galaxies. It expands and contracts. And you are learning how to move with it instead of against it. You are learning how to interpret the ebb as deeply as the flow. You are learning that presence, not power, is the portal. This presence begins to affect more than just your inner world. Your relationships become richer, not because others change, but because you meet them from a place of resonance, not need. You don't demand understanding. You offer space. You don't chase connection. You hold coherence. And in doing so, you stop confusing attention with intimacy. You stop confusing chaos with chemistry. You remember that the most magnetic people are not the loudest, but the clearest. Clarity becomes your currency. And this clarity doesn't shout. It glows. It radiates. People feel safe around it without knowing why. Your presence begins to regulate spaces without effort. You walk into rooms and bring coherence just by being coherent. Not because you've declared anything, but because your frequency is uncheckable. Not in arrogance, but in truth. And truth, at this level, is not about information. It's about resonance. You speak only what aligns. You rest when needed. You create not for applause, but for expression. You lead not with force, but with embodiment. You begin to recognize yourself as an emanation of something sacred. And sacred doesn't mean serious. It means precise, alive, attuned. Even your challenges shift shape. You stop calling them problems. You start calling them portals. Every disruption becomes an opportunity to refine your tone. Every discomfort, a chance to anchor deeper. You stop trying to eliminate contrast. You learn to move through it without static. You hold your tone even in turbulence, not because you're numb, but because you're clear. And this clarity begins to unlock timelines you thought were reserved for the lucky ones. Not because you've become better, but because you've become truer. The version of you who once doubted everything, she's still here, but she's quiet now, not silenced, but seen, understood, integrated. She knows she's safe in your hands. You no longer fight your old patterns. You embrace them. You walk forward, not as someone who's conquered their past, but as someone who has absorbed its wisdom into their signal. This is the final frequency. Not a final destination, but a state of being that no longer fractures under pressure. You don't lose your tone when others project theirs. You don't outsource your regulation to outcomes. You don't shapeshift to maintain harmony. You are harmony. And when you live from harmony, life bends. Not in submission, but in synchronicity. The opportunities that land feel designed. The pauses that come feel purposeful. The people who find you feel like echoes. You no longer feel behind, or too late, or unworthy, because you know, not intellectually, but vibrationally, that reality is always mirroring you. And you've become the mirror you longed for. So now, When you meet uncertainty, you don't beg for answers. You broadcast your tone, and you trust the field to meet it, because it always has. You are no longer a visitor to coherence. You live here. Now, not as a performance, not as a fleeting meditation, but as a baseline. It's quiet here, but not empty. It's rich, full of space, depth, nuance. A kind of fullness that doesn't need to announce itself. You don't wake with urgency anymore. You wake with awareness. The frequency you once chased has become your language. The atmosphere around you, the feeling inside you, the lens through which the world now appears. And the world, interestingly, begins to soften in return. This doesn't mean your life is without challenge, but challenge is no longer your compass. You don't define growth by pain anymore. You don't need struggle to justify transformation. You trust subtlety. You trust ease. You trust the way energy moves when it's not manipulated, only witnessed. And that witnessing, it becomes your most powerful technology, because presence is more potent than force. There's a sacredness to your movements now. You don't rush decisions. You sense them. You don't wrestle timelines. You receive them. You don't push to manifest. You match the signal of what's already there. This new life doesn't ask for your exhaustion. It asks for your attunement. And you've become attuned. Your body knows before your thoughts do. When something isn't right, you don't override. You don't debate. You notice the tension in your chest, the shift in your breath, the subtle contraction, and you listen. You no longer treat intuition like a guest. It's become the architect of your reality. And because of this, your alignment is no longer accidental. It's embodied. Embodiment isn't about perfect behavior. It's about honest frequency. No, now, the field doesn't need your explanation. It needs your essence. You no longer try to be high vibe in moments of fear. You acknowledge the fear. You hold it. You feel it without becoming it. And in doing so, your tone stays steady. You no longer shapeshift to avoid discomfort. You remain intact. You stop translating your frequency into terms others will approve of. You let it speak in its original language. Silence, softness, stillness, signal. And that signal, that quiet transmission you've been practicing, is no longer an effort. It's your rhythm. It plays even when you're not aware, even when you sleep, even when you're still learning. Because now, you've stopped performing your power. You've become it. You walk with less urgency and more gravity. Your presence speaks in rooms you haven't entered yet. You attract not because you're trying, but because your coherence carries. And what it carries is unmistakable. Truth. A truth not shouted. A truth that hums. A truth that magnetizes without needing to explain itself. And now, when you sit in silence, it doesn't feel empty. It feels alive, because you can hear yourself clearly, not your thoughts, not your self-concept, but your signal. The remembered tone beneath the noise. It's the same signal you felt when you first glimpsed who you really were, even before you could name it. That moment of stillness, that flash of clarity, that deep, quiet yes. Only now, it's not a moment. It's you. You are no longer becoming the signal. You are the signal. And now, as you sit quietly at the edge of this remembrance, you realize nothing outside you has changed, and yet everything feels different. The breath in your chest, the stillness in your spine, the silence that no longer demands to be filled, they all speak the same truth. You are home, not in a place, but in a frequency. There is nothing left to chase, nothing to fix, nothing more to earn. Only this tone, this awareness, this being. Let yourself return to it often. Let it guide you when the noise rises again. Let it remind you that you are not a seeker anymore. You are the signal, and the field is listening. It always was, If this journey stirred something in you, a memory, a calm, a quiet knowing, subscribe to our channel so we can meet again next time. Other stories are waiting for you, not to entertain you, but to reawaken what you already are. Until then, hold your tone, trust your resonance, and remember, you were never lost, just tuning.